Hello and welcome to the David Carrier Show. I'm David Carrier, your family's personal attorney. We got to update that intro because practicing law over 30 years. Yeah, well, true enough. But now it's 41 years. Can you imagine that? I guess 41 is more than 30, so gives you a hint of how long I've been doing this radio show without upgrades. Well, what can I say? If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Anyway, this is the place, of course, where we talk about estate planning, elder law, real estate, and business law. So if you have a question, a comment, or concern about wills, trusts, probate, if you're wondering how to get that business humming along, if you're looking at buying or selling, now's the time. Give us a call, 616-774-2424. 616-774-2424. It does, I got to tell you, it does seem like people are finally getting over this COVID thing. Our workshops are full and filling. We're putting some more on, the in-person workshops. Still, we do some that are online. If you want to do that, that's available as well. But it's really nice to see people coming out again and finally putting that what do you want to say? The unnamed virus of an unknown origin. Finally putting that to one side. Still in all, there was a wake-up call there, it seems like to me, about how sometimes things can go pretty much sideways, pretty darn quickly. Look around now. I mean, we've got the inflation, hyperinflation. You don't hear about it much. Why don't you hear about it much, or as much as you would? I'll leave you to draw your own conclusions on that one. I don't want to be political, you don't want that. Oh, no. So anyway, if you think that negative growth makes a recession, I guess that's a minority opinion these days. At least it's not a very popular one. So give us a call. Why don't you? 616-774-2424. People are still living. People are still dying, and they're still screwing up both. Just saying, there are ways to do this stuff if you wanna, and if you don't, shame on you. That's my considered opinion. Anyway, there are, we talk about COVID and the hangover. Have you ever had a hangover? Have you? Drunk too much, New Year's Eve or whatever, and then regretted it the next day. When I was 18, now this is prehistory for an awful lot of our younger viewers, but I don't think I have very many younger viewers. But you may, or listeners, you may recall back in the day when the drinking age was 18. Now, I grew up on Cape Cod, okay, and the hospitality industry is a big deal there. And so I'd been working in restaurants right along, since I was a kid, washing dishes and busboy and all that kind of stuff, and bar boy. Back then, they allowed such things. So I was not exactly unfamiliar with the world of alcoholic beverages, let me put it that way. But on my 18th birthday, now I was legal, and the day after was, well, never been repeated, let me put it that way. We're about to hit an 18th birthday plus one hangover with some of this COVID stuff. Okay. The day after my 18th birthday was Sunday, and I felt that I should not have to go to church on Sunday. That particular Sunday, my father shamed me, and so I did go, but I didn't last. Let me put it down. It was well, here we are, 60, 50 some odd years later, and it's like yesterday. It made an impression. Let me put it that way. And this COVID hangover is going to make a difference. And I'm not talking about the, people getting COVID or Omicron or Zeta Tau or whatever they're calling it now. I'm not talking about that. Obviously, it doesn't matter anymore because for reasons it doesn't matter anymore that COVID's still hanging around, and will as long as human beings. I think. I mean, we'll never eradicate it. It's the same sort of virus as the common cold, right? I mean, that's, although who knows? I'm just repeating stuff. I'm not a scientist. What do I know? But here's the legal ramification of that, and the hammer's about to fall come April. Here's how Medicaid works. Okay. And I'm concerned about people with long-term care. You know that, right? And long-term care is paid for by Medicaid for most everybody. There are some people who can afford $15,000 a month for nursing home care. There are other people who can afford the 7,000. It's funny now. They were all clustered right around the 6,900 mark. When you look at the assisted living facilities, their opening bid is 6,700 a month, 6,900 a month. That $7,000 must be a barrier for them, psychological barrier. That's what I'm thinking. Just looking at the pricing that you get out of facility after facility. What they don't have a psychological burden on, though, is once you're in the facility, all the extras, which are going to push it way above 7,000 anyway. Check it for yourself if you don't, you don't have to believe me. That's the beauty thing about the show. You don't have to believe me on anything because you can check it all for yourself. I encourage you to do so. That's on the pricing. Now, because people can't afford that, real people can't afford that. Some people can, I suppose, for some small period of time. But we have people who have worked and saved and worked and saved, and frugality is a watchword, and all the rest of the stuff. And you think, well, you've got enough money to pay. Well, wait a second. I've got a spouse who's got to live, and lots of times with the dementia, the person's still physically healthy. So we're looking at a very long period of time. So you don't want to prejudge that thing. Now, here's the problem. Since COVID, and we've had this emergency, many of the rules have been suspended. So the Department of Health and Human Services has not been taking adverse actions, and they haven't been checking either. See, when you're on the Medicaid, it's not like you go into the nursing home and you say, "Hey, give me some Medicaid." It doesn't work like that. They say, "Well, it's an 8-page application." Yeah, it's an 8-page application, and you need several hundred pages of documentation to establish every number on the form on that 8 pages. Okay, so that's not there's that misconception. Anyway, point is, once you submit that application, all right, then they provide, if it checks out, at least on the surface, then they will provide services. However, the processing month, the month that they receive the application, is called the processing month. You have 13 months is what they call the presumed asset eligible period. Now, that means a lot of different things. One of the things it means is we don't care whose name the assets are in. So we'll give you benefits, all right? But you have 13 months, the presumed asset eligible period, to get your spouse's name off the assets. Or we're going to deny your benefits when it comes up for redetermination. That's another word you gotta know. Presumed asset eligible period, that's key. Also, redetermination. Now, what if they find that you didn't take the spouse's name off the assets? Well, now they take an adverse action, and within a month, you're off the Medicaid. What if it turns out that you accumulated too much money because you didn't spend that? They let you keep $60 a month. What if you didn't spend it? Well, now you're over assets. Now you don't qualify anymore. Remember, with Medicaid, $1 over is over. Over is over. You get an extra dollar, you don't qualify. You're off. Boom. Okay? That's the way Medicaid works. Now, imagine, and there's a whole bunch more rules. I'm just giving you a couple of the most obvious ones. What if they didn't enforce the rules? You ever hear the old saying, when the cat's away, the mice will play? Well, the cat's been off duty for 3 years now throughout this COVID thing. Right? When we get back, I'll explain how the mice have been playing. Am I calling you mice? Well, I guess so. Apologize to To mice. Anyway, you're listening to the David Carrier Show. I'm David Carrier, your family's personal attorney. Give us a call, why don't you? 616-774-2424. Welcome back to the David Carrier Show. I'm David Carrier, your family's personal attorney. And now's the time to give us a call, 616-774-2424, if you have a question, comment, or concern. We will get back to our COVID hangover, but right now we've got Dean on the line. Good morning, Dean. Welcome to the David Carrier Show.
Good morning. I had a question about, I have a house that I'm renting.
Okay.
And the township tax rolls, and I find that they didn't have it listed as rental. They just had it listed as residence and charging taxes that way. I wonder, is there a big difference now that they decide that it's rental property? Am I on the hook for a big increase in taxes?
Yes, you are. Holy cats. So here's how did you get the house, Dean, if I could ask? Was it your residence or inherited or what?
Yeah, it wasn't my residence. And then I got a different house and I moved, and then I let a few people in there a couple of years, wanted just to make sure nobody broke in the house or had damage or anything, and I didn't rent it. But then a couple of years, I said, well, wait a minute, I could charge rent. So
Sure.
I started charging rent. And then I didn't think to go down to the township office and say, hey, I'm renting this. But, and so they just hit me with a normal tax, I guess.
Did that just happen? When you say they hit you with the normal tax, I mean, did that just happen?
Well, they haven't yet. They said, oh yeah, we got to come out and inspect the house, and make sure you got smoke detectors and stuff like that in there, and everything's up to shape. And meanwhile, I'm still waiting for the inspection, but it occurred to me that I may be in this been going on now for like over 5 years.
Yeah.
So I might have 5 years of extra taxes due or something.
Yeah. So here's how it works. Well, what about the house you're living in now? Are you taking the homestead exemption on that?
Yes.
That's probably how they caught you. When they probably matched it. Anyway, here's how it works. If you cast your memory back to the fabled days of yesteryear, way back, back into the 1990s, Michigan had a 4% sales tax, 4%.
Yes.
And because the schools were run on the local property taxes, we had some counties that were very rich, some school districts that were very wealthy, rich. East Grand Rapids springs to mind. And then you had some that were bankrupt before the end of the school year. So what they said was, well, wait a second. What if the education of the kids did not depend so much on where they were brought up? Because in a situation like that, if you're in a quote unquote poor community, right, then your schools are going to be lousy because there's no money to pay for them. Whereas if you're in a wealthy community, then the schools are going to be great because there's all this money, based on the property taxes. So you had a great disparity in the education, and I can tell you that this is how it worked in my family. Education is the ladder up, is the way you can move up. So they said, well, I'll tell you what if we increase the sales tax from 4% to 6%? Which is everybody's got a 6% sales tax anyway. We've got kind of a low sales tax. Let's just increase the sales tax. And we're going to take that 2% and we're going to spread it among all the students in Michigan. So if you're a student in Michigan, you get a certain amount of money. And back then it was like $5,000 or something like this. And now I don't even know what it is. I'll look it up during the break. The per pupil grant. So what that did was it enabled students, the student gets the money, not the school. Now, schools still have what they call operating millages. They still operate, they still get money from the local tax base. That's still a thing, and it's still important. In fact, it's about 40%, something like that. It just depends on your local school district, but it is about 40% of the tax bill. So if your tax bill is $100 and we knock $40 off, you're paying $60. So on your house, you've been paying at the $60 rate. When this gets all figured out, they're going to add back the $40. So your tax, and sometimes it's higher. Sometimes it's more than 40%. So you might wind up paying as much as twice, 100% increase, okay, because you went from homestead exemption property to the normal rate. So it can be a substantial increase, and yeah, they'll go back to when you moved. They're supposed to catch that at the title company. You know, when you buy a house and you claim the homestead exemption, you're supposed to rescind the homestead exemption on the prior property. You know, we see a lot of this with not so much in your situation as when people go into long-term care, you're allowed to keep your homestead exemption so long as no one else is living there. And then they changed it so a family member could live there. And it's one of those areas where an awful lot of people get caught in the switches because they don't, you do what you're told. And if they don't tell you, hey, come on down, you got to change this, but you don't change it. You just assume, hey, it's okay. Does that make sense, Don?
Yeah, no, I never did anything with the exemption there.
Well, you did back in the 90s when they passed Proposal A. You may remember it was a constitutional amendment to the Michigan Constitution, right? It was a constitutional amendment that upped the sales tax and devoted it to the per pupil grants, and then they did this homestead exemption thing, and so everybody did it because it was a huge relief. It cut your property taxes, not quite by half for most people, but almost cut your property taxes in half. So you probably did it way back in the day, but you wouldn't have, once you did it, you don't think about it. I mean, it just kind of happens. Although on that property notice that you get on the annual notice of property taxes, it will tell you how much of the property is viewed as homestead, and I don't know if it's legally required to tell you the truth, but it also says because it's homestead, you save this much money. Now, how you interpret that or whatever, I mean, I don't think most people know. Why would you? But you can't have two homesteads, cannot have two homesteads, and you can't claim the exemption twice. And this is actually kind of what I'm talking about with the Medicaid stuff. There's a lot of things that are catching up to folks, things that you thought you were doing right, but it's going to turn out you weren't. So, but that's the thing. I wish I had better news for you. But that's the kind of thing where they can go back all 5 years and claim the taxes. If anyone else,
back can they go?
They can go back as far as they want because you owe them the taxes. You can go back 3 years.
Yeah.
So if you work,
yeah, I've had that for it's probably 7 years anyway.
Well, there you go. I'd work it out with them. I mean, I think okay. I think what you need to do, you need to go to is it a township? Is it like a rural township?
No, it's a township. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd work with the township assessor. I'd get my butt on down there and say, hey, here's the deal. You don't want to do this by correspondence. You want to be a real person who's going to get, 2x4 to the back of the head when these taxes are increased. And the last thing you can do is pay back 7 years. Okay. You want to, I would get down there with the township treasurer and work something out. Okay. That would be my advice.
Okay.
All righty.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean.
It just occurred to me that I might be on the hook for something.
Yeah. There you go. You've been listening to the David Carrier Show. I'm David Carrier, your family's personal attorney. Welcome back to the David Carrier Show. I'm David Carrier, your family's personal attorney. Dean from Dean had this is our last caller. And you can be a caller too. It's easy. 616-774-2424. Now, Dean was living in a house, got his homestead exemption, right, which reduces your property taxes so that kids all across Michigan get their own grant. So there's thousands of dollars that follow the student. So now this is why you've got all the charter schools and everything else. And you can go district to district and schools of choice, that whole thing, because the money follows the kid instead of you have to live here in order to get to go to the school. You see? I mean, back in the day, I'll tell you, back in the day, we did a lot of guardianships and what have you because kids wanted to go live with aunt or uncle or friend in a more favorable school district. And so they would actually move. I don't know how actual it was, but at least they would do a guardianship so that your friend or relation living in, I used East Grand Rapids as an example. I think everybody understands, that it's kind of expensive, kind of pricey in East Grand Rapids. Yeah, well, part of it is the very high school operating millage, which, of course, now you don't pay if you're actually living there. Okay, but back in the day, the only way you could get there was by buying a house and paying the high millage, or have be quote unquote living with someone in that district. How often people actually live there? That's another mystery in the shrouded in the past of time, right? Mystery of history. Anyway, nowadays the money goes with the kid, so we don't have to do bogus things like that anymore. In order to get a good education for your kid, schools of choice and the charter schools and all the rest of the stuff have made. We gave the money basically to the person who consumes the services. And there's been good consequences and bad consequences of that, right? Some of the good consequences, well, you have an aviation high school. My impression is that's a good thing. You have more moving between districts. You have more, like I say, special charter schools and what have you. That's all made possible by the per pupil grant that comes through this the increase in the sales tax. Okay. Now, in order to plus the other problem we had was and this was all an integrated thing, because that's when they went between from every year that your property increased in value, your taxes increased in value. Your taxes increased as well. So if they reassessed your property and the property went up and it was assessed at the highest and best use, well, you've got a potato farm. Someone else sees russet acres as a housing development, and then they tax you at the housing development rate. So that was a bad thing as well. Plus, just the general increase in land values was taxing people out of their homes and all the rest of this. So at the same time that they did the Proposal A, part of Proposal A was to cap the property taxes so they couldn't go up more than around 2% maximum per year. See, this is why when you look at your tax bill, if you're a homeowner, you look at, or any kind of real estate owner, you look at that annual property tax bill that you get, and there's the state equalized value, which is 1/2 of the actual cash value, which is what they think your property is worth. So if you look at your bill and it says 100,000 as the SEV, state equalized value, then what they're telling you is they think that your property is worth twice that, 200,000. Okay, but you don't pay tax on the 200,000. You pay tax on the taxable value, which is different. The taxable value is the value back when you bought the thing, okay, plus, and not the price, but the value, the SEV back then, plus this 2% creep, okay? So over the years, if you've had somebody who's been living in the same place for the last 30 years, and the SEV was established back in the day, let's say, back in I forget exactly when it was Was it 95, late 90s? Anyway, so you've had for 20 years, the value of the property keeps going up. So you might have an SEV of 100,000, but a taxable value of 30,000, 40,000. It happens. Okay. Now, who gets socked with a new higher tax rate is the people moving into the neighborhood. So if you move into East Grand Rapids, right, you're not going to be paying tax at the rate of your neighbors. You're going to be paying tax at the SEV. You're going to be paying tax on the SEV, not the prior taxable value. That makes sense? Right? So the person you bought the house from was paying tax on $40,000 of value. You're going to be taxed on $100,000 of value. So your property tax is going to skyrocket compared to what the person who was there before was paying, and what your neighbors are actually paying. This is why we call it the welcome neighbor. That's what they call it. The welcome neighbor, howdy neighbor, tax system, because you like to see new neighbors because they're paying taxes, a multiple of what you're paying. They're the ones shouldering the burden. But what's the alternative? We tried the alternative, and it was deemed unacceptable to be taxing people out of their houses. Plus, if you're buying into the neighborhood, you know what the taxes are. Nobody's surprised by that. I guess that's really the point, that if your taxes are 3 times your neighbors, you can get jealous about it. You can feel bad about it. But if you move in the neighborhood, you move in the neighborhood, and you're going to pay those taxes. That's kind of the way it is. So my point is that when you sell your property, right, or when it's not homestead anymore, and then they say, look, we don't want to tax people out of their houses. So the school operating millage, right, which is a big chunk of it, a school operating millage, we're not going to charge you that if you're agricultural or if it's your homestead, one or the other. That was a deal they made. Okay, fine. That's the deal. But when it's not homestead anymore, now you've got to pay it at the regular rate of tax. See, what happened to our friend Dean is nobody told him he was supposed to change it. Okay, well, we didn't tell you, but now now we're going to go back 7 years and we're going to whack you for all the taxes that we think you should have paid. That's what's happening. That's what's going to happen. That's the hammer that's going to fall on an awful lot of people who during the COVID were getting the Medicaid benefits, because come April, right, they're going to start holding people to account. Come April, they're going to start the rolling redetermination thing that they'd been doing before. See, with the Medicaid, once you're not on forever. You're on until you prove that you're eligible again, which is a redetermination, which happens once a year. And they do asset detection and all kinds of stuff to make sure that you're still eligible. Well, during COVID, they say, we're not going to worry about it. We're not going to worry about it. Now, understand, people screw this up in 12 months, okay? I mean, it's unbelievable what people will do in the 12 months, right, between getting the Medicaid and the redetermination. They don't follow through, blah, 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 blah. One of the reasons, there's many, but one of them, our Medicaid practice is so active is because regular folks have a hard time with this stuff. It's like doing your taxes. Why is H&R Block in business? You know what I'm saying? Why is the tax preparation service in business? Well, it's right there. It's in the forms. Yeah, I know, but it's hard to figure this stuff out. Very true. And so we have seen over the years, many, many cases, even where once a year they double check. Imagine you went for 36 months and no one checked. That's the situation we've got. You've been listening to the David Carrier Show. I'm David Carrier, your family's personal attorney. Welcome back to the David Carrier Show. I'm David Carrier, your family's personal attorney. Now's the time. Give us a call, 616-774-2424. I promised I would tell you how much each student gets in Michigan. And it surprised me, actually. It's $9,150 per student. So if you're running a school, right, you get from the state of Michigan, in addition to school operating millage, whatever else the local school district is providing from the local property taxes, each student is worth $9,150. Now, there's a look, that's not all the expenses, obviously. It costs more than that to educate a kid, if possible. But that's what the per pupil grant is, as of last summer. That's when they set it for 2023. They set it back in the summer of 2022, and that number is $9,150. So every time you see a kid going to a school, there's $9,000 attached to the kid, $9,150 attached to the kid. That's how that works. Okay. Which is why you have schools of choice, charter schools, all the rest, because now there's state money that follows the kid in addition to the local money that's also available. All righty. So what's going on with the Medicaid? Why is the hammer's about to fall? Why am I gloom and dooming it? And I'm absolutely gloom and dooming it. In fact, National Public Radio, if you can believe this, National Public Radio came out with a story that's saying that like almost 10 million people are going to be kicked off Medicaid across the country if the usual rates of non-compliance show up. See, every year people lose their Medicaid because they didn't comply with the rules. They got on the Medicaid. They comply with the rules that far, okay, or enough, maybe even with inaccurate information, to get the benefits. Are you with me on this? So they got on the Medicaid, yeah. But you have to stay eligible. In other words, if you're in a long-term care facility, you can't have more than $2,000. What that means is that if your kids didn't pay the patient pay amount, right, your Social Security minus $60, they didn't pay that to the facility, you're in trouble. Now, back in the day, and I mean years ago, a few years ago, what that meant was they would catch it during the redetermination, which happened every year. So every year, you have to go back and say, here's how much money I got, here's where it went. Or your loved ones have to do that for you. And plus, everyone in a nursing home, they get $60 a month. Well, that sounds, well, I mean, it doesn't get your hair done. It doesn't, my hair would be fine. But for, if you want the nursing home perm, you're not going to get it on $60 a month. For most people, $60 a month is not enough for the incidentals. But there are a lot of other folks, they don't know how to spend the $60. Nothing to spend it on. And as a consequence, every month that goes by, they've got $60 more. They can only have $2,000, right? Well, in a year, right, $60 a month, what's 6 times 12? 72, right? Right? No, it's 84. So that's $840. Well, what if you started off with $1,700 and you didn't spend it? Now you're over. Now you're not eligible for the Medicaid. They paid, but you're not eligible. Can they go back and take it back? Yeah, they can. And who are they going to take it back from? From whom will they take it back? They will take it back from the long-term care facility. What does that mean? That means the nursing home, long-term care facility, is now unhappy with you because you were there, you got services, and you didn't pay for them. As long as Medicaid's paying, they're happy. But what if Medicaid's not paying? Now what? Now they sue you. When you say, well, I don't have anything. Remember that free house? Remember the house that you were able to keep because Medicaid doesn't come after the house? Remember that? Remember the car? The personal property that you were able to hang on to? Things that everyone told, oh, don't worry, you get to keep the house. Oh, it's no big deal. Just one more example of how partial information is the road to ruin. Okay, more people lose their houses that way because they screw up the Medicaid, something happens, now the nursing home wants to get paid. Generally speaking, in the usual way this goes, the nursing home doesn't have to sue. They just say to the family, hey, you're not paying. You got the house. Don't make us come after you. Don't make us sue you. And so the kids will sell the house. And now they'll be on private pay until all the house money is gone, and then they'll go back on the Medicaid, which they screwed that up too. But now there's no recourse, right? Because the house is gone. But that's how it works frequently. And what NPR said was, if the usual rates of noncompliance hold, right? If the usual rates of noncompliance hold, then 10 million people will lose their Medicaid. Now, does anybody think that the usual rates of noncompliance will hold? Who thinks that? You didn't have 12 months to mess it up. You had 36. You had 3 years to mess this up, to not comply, right? I think it's going to be absolutely horrific. That's what I think. I think people are going to go in there. They're going to say, hey, I was doing this for the last 3 years. And they're going to say, too bad, so sad, you're off. Maybe there'll be understanding. I don't know. But this is a national thing. Michigan has been, the word we've gotten has been, month to month. Oh, they're going to start it last October. They're going to start it in February. They're going to start it in January. They're going to start it. Well, now the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Studies have come out and said, enough's enough. April is the month. Okay. If you have a loved one on the long-term care, right, who's receiving Medicaid benefits, you really need to have somebody like us, maybe, possibly, take a look at that stuff. All right. You need to do that because the consequence is going to be severe come April. I mean, they haven't taken any adverse actions. They've got a whole, well, who knows? It's a government bureaucracy, so maybe they don't. But I believe, I'm pretty sure, they've got a list of the naughty, and they got the naughty and nice list. You know what I'm saying? At least the naughty list. At least the unsophisticated naughty list. People who are known to be in non-compliance. You know what I mean? People who haven't done what they need to do. People who they would have kicked off already, except they couldn't take an adverse action. Look, La La Land is over in April. It's over. And maybe that's offensive because, hey, I got a loved one on Medicaid. That's not La La Land. I get it. So I'm sorry, I'm being offensive. But the point is that you're not going to get the benefits. They're going to just cut them. And now they come after the house. Now they come after whatever else it is you've got. Now they start suing people. That's another trend of and by they, I don't mean Medicaid. Medicaid doesn't sue anybody. It's the nursing home who sues because the nursing home's unhappy because they're not getting paid. And rightfully so. You can't pay people if you don't have money coming in. And if Medicaid isn't going to pay, well, how's that going to happen? People complain about the staffing levels. I get it. But if you're trying to run a nursing home and you don't have any money, pretty tough to hire people. Pretty tough to give them raises so that you can compete with other facilities, with other job offers. Okay? It's a tough situation. It's coming true in April. Been listening to the David Carrier Show. I'm David Carrier, your family's personal attorney.
He served at the Pentagon as an Army JAG. He graduated from Notre Dame and has 2 law degrees from Boston University and Georgetown University. He's been practicing law for over 30 years. He's your family's personal attorney. It's time for the David Carrier Show.
Hello and welcome to the David Carrier Show. I'm David Carrier, your family's personal attorney. Now is the time to give us a shout, 616-774-2424. That's area code 616-774-2424. We'll get your question, comment, or concern on the air. Now, some astute people have noticed that I have a little bit of a cold today. That's true. It's not COVID. Don't worry about that. I have taken 3 tests so far, and those all came up negative. You may recall that a couple weeks ago we were doing the show from Texas, And we had a no, if you want to know what happened in Texas, I'll tell you. But you got to call in for that one, okay? But we took a team out to San Antonio, home of the Alamo, and so far 4 of the 6 have come down with the COVID. Not me, but I keep taking the test just to make sure that I'm COVID free. Not that is any big deal anymore. Anyway, except for some people, then it's a big deal. But there's things that are a big deal for everybody. So anyway, give us a call, 616-774-2424. I promise you can't get whatever it is I've got through the through the airwaves. But I was out skiing yesterday. That was good. The weather down here hasn't been in our area hasn't been the best for skiing, and my my youngest kid, was on the ski team at school. Why not, I guess. And so they had to go up to Cabernet, and I'm stuck in the A Lodge there, hanging out, trying to get work done. And I only did that half the day, and then I went out and shushed a little bit. So you see, it's not that bad, and didn't get worse because I did that. Anyway, 616-774-2424. That's the number to call. One of the things that we covered in the first hour, and I really want to reemphasize, because if you're tuning in now, and it's I try not to gloom and doom things too much, but occasionally you got a reason to do. I've got a reason to do it, and the situation is that for the last 3 years during the COVID state of emergency, you remember this, right? State of emergency is still in effect. So that the governor has emergency powers to do, I don't know, shut down Lowe's. So you can't buy garden seeds, but you can buy paint. Anyway, that's still in effect. But what has happened, in order to avoid interruption of medical services, I guess that's the best way to put it, and because it's pretty hard to run a state agency if nobody's coming to work. That was the other thing, I think. What they did was they said, all right, we're not going to take adverse actions. We're not going to knock anybody off the Medicaid. If you're on the Medicaid, we're not going to check your paper. Well, initially, yes, but then once you're on, we're not going to check your paperwork. We're not going to make sure that you're still eligible. In fact, if we find out that you're not eligible, we're not going to kick you off either. Okay. All right. We're not going to assess penalties, on and on. All the usual adverse actions that they would take, they haven't been taking. Okay. So the problem with that is that you're supposed to redetermine these things every year. Somebody's supposed to check your math every year. Well, and things change. Do I have to tell you that? I mean, things change. You got the inheritance from Aunt Millie, this and that happened. Things happen. And you didn't tell them about it because they didn't check on you for 3 years. Now they're going to check. Now they're checking. All right. Do you think that there's an awful lot of people out there, millions across the country, who knows how many, who haven't complied? All right. Who haven't done the things they were supposed to do in order to maintain Medicaid eligibility for their loved one in the long-term care facility, in the nursing home. Look, we see people mess this stuff up in short order, in 12 months. Okay. That said, I mean, there are an awful lot of people who don't. Yeah, I get it. But if you give people 3 years of no accountability, or very limited accountability, right? What do you think happens when you call? I mean, it's what you see happen in the schools, right? I mean, look at the schools. Look at the churches, right? Oh, you don't have to come. Well, you just convinced 20% of the people that they don't ever have to come, that they don't have to do the homework, that they don't have to show up, that they don't have to follow through. Do you say, are you with me on this? Not everybody, but it's a substantial, and who knows how big a problem it's going to be. Well, The gravy train is over in April. The forbearance is over in April. So if you know anyone who's got a loved one in a long-term care facility, chances are 8 out of 10 that they're on Medicaid. All right? Because nobody can afford it. Nobody can afford the $15,000 a month, $12,000 to $15,000 a month. Who can afford that? Nobody. That's why they go broke and now they're on the Medicaid. All right? And nobody's been checking the math for the last 3 years. They're going to start checking the math come April. The letters are going out. Okay? And when those letters go out, and now you've got somebody who says, hey, wait a second, you've had $2,100 in the bank account now for 2 years. Okay. What happens then? See, this is the $64,000 question. This is the big question, right? What happens when they find that you're not eligible for long-term care benefits anymore? What are they going to do? Are they going to go back and say, okay, you weren't eligible for the last 2 years, right? We're going to take the money back from the nursing home because you were not eligible. You just weren't eligible. We're going to go back, take the money back, and let the nursing home sue you, get the house. Are they going to do that? Are they going to say, well, we're going to take this adverse action. You have a month to comply, and we're going to forget about the past? Are they going to do that? The honest answer is nobody knows. Nobody knows. We've heard stuff. Well, that's the problem. You hear it both ways. One person says, "Oh, they're not going to worry about these divestments, and they're not going to assess penalties." And the other one says they're absolutely going to assess penalties. They're going to be knocking people off the Medicaid because it's gotten to be so expensive. See, if you don't whittle away, if you don't knock the people off who aren't eligible, and you just pay for whoever, for everybody, even the ones who aren't eligible anymore. Let's think about this. Thought experiment. If I pay for people who are eligible, and I pay for people who are not eligible, and in the past, I would not be paying for the people who are not eligible, but now I am paying for those people, even though they're not eligible. Would I be spending more money or less money? What do you think? Obviously, the answer is a lot more money. And where's that coming from? Well, look in the mirror. That's where it's coming from. Okay. So what are they going to do about it? Are they going to cut people's benefits? Say, okay, yeah, we spent all that extra money, blah, 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 COVID, blah, blah, blah. So blah, blah. Taxpayers screwed again. Are they going to say that? Or are they going to say, or are they going to say, no, we're going back for that money. You owe us $100,000, $200,000. Okay. Well, you have a lot more heart attacks that way, right? Or are they going to say, well, going forward, you're off the benefits? See, there's no good solution to this. There's no happy ending here, because either the people who are not eligible, they either go back and assess you for tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars in Medicaid dollars that should not have been spent because you weren't eligible. I get that you didn't know you weren't eligible, but oh well, right? Or are they going to say, well, going forward, you're not eligible? So now you've got to come up with a $10,000, $12,000, $15,000 a month. What are they going to do? And the answer is, we'll find out in April, I guess, right? So what we are doing is we're going back and we're looking at our files, we're looking at our cases, and frankly, we've made some efforts, in addition to new cases coming in, some efforts to keep people on the straight and narrow. Will that be enough? We don't know. I guess we're going to find out. Okay. So, it's one of those things where if you do have a loved one in long-term care, somebody, it's time to batten down the hatches. It's time to take a hard look at what has been going on over the last 3 years, because they're going to be asking. They're going to be looking. They're going to do the asset detection, as they always do, as they used to do. Now they're going to start doing that again. And, they've put it off and put it off and put it off. We can't put it off anymore. It's coming. So if you do have a loved one in the long-term care on the Medicaid, stand by for April, because things are going to get worse. Or you can give us a call. We'll take a look at your stuff and see what we can see what we can tell you. Give you a little bit of advance warning. You've been listening to the David Carrier Show. I'm David Carrier, your family's personal attorney. Yeah, I'm here. I just like listening to the Beatles. That's all. Okay, welcome back to the David Carrier Show. I'm David Carrier, your family's personal attorney, and I do like the Beatles. Who doesn't? So I've already warned you about what's coming in April if you're already on the Medicaid, right? And this gets back to a fundamental problem that America has. And the fundamental problem is people are getting older. America is getting older. I don't know if you've noticed this. But the fact of the matter is that if you look at the population mix, right, older people versus younger people, there's more older people, and us baby boomers, 1957 for me, birthday. So, I count as a baby boomer. They count as people even through 64, I think, as baby boomers. So includes most of my siblings. But anyway, long story short, there's more of us. We're healthier than we used to be. We're living longer than we used to be. We're more productive than we used to be. That's all true. But we're still hanging around. That's also true. And eventually, we can't deny reality anymore, and age takes its toll, and there you are. And now you need more care. At the same time, the baby boomers didn't have families the size of the baby boomers' parents. As a consequence, there's not as many young people around either to take care of all the, all of us geezers. Okay, so if we've got more old people and fewer young people, and the old people need care and the younger people provide the care, some of them anyway, right? By the way, there's also been a change in family dynamics, family relationships, so that what was viewed in years past as normal, natural, inevitable, the whole sandwich generation idea, do you remember this? This was very popular a while ago. It's not that you can't see it sometimes, but you don't see it like you used to. And this was the idea that you had kids who are not only, mostly women, kids who are not only caring for their own families, their own children, but also caring for the parents. And the idea was that they were the sandwich generation. They were in between, right? So they were caring for older people and their own kids at the same time. Well, you don't hardly see that anymore because, number one, they're not having kids anymore. And number two, once they find out what's actually involved, find out what's actually involved in terms of personal hygiene, every other dang thing, in caring for somebody, they don't want any part of it. Oh, not your kids. Oh, I'm sure, right? Yeah, your kids will be the exception. Sure, they will. I believe you because you told me so. Anyway, point being that the traditional support mechanisms are not what they used to be. The old gray mare, she ain't what she used to be. That's true. And the ways that we cared for the old gray mare, they ain't what they used to be either. Okay. So that's a problem. Okay. It's an ongoing demographic problem. You can't escape it. There's no way to escape it. Right. It's just happening. It's happening now. COVID killed older people. This idea that you're shutting down the schools, it's just so arrogantly, offensively stupid because, well, the kids weren't getting it. They're not getting it now. Back then, if you look at the numbers, and I publish this, I do the newspaper thing. So I put out the CDC numbers with the graphs and everything else. And you can check the numbers yourself. You don't have to believe me. Don't believe me. Go to the CDC. Look at the historical data. You'll see who died from COVID. Oh, well, they're not the only ones getting sick. I know they're not the only ones getting sick, but the only ones dying, right? That's kind of a bad consequence, right? Anyway, long story short, we're confronted with a situation where more people need care, less people are available to provide the care. When demand goes up and supply goes down, nobody's surprised that prices go up. Okay? We have seen I don't say ridiculous, but breathtaking, that's accurate, breathtaking growth in the cost of care. Breathtaking growth. And try to find a caregiver. Even at those rates, try to find one who, no offense, who doesn't have green hair, purple hair, or whatever, on purpose, I mean, right? Who doesn't have, colors not found in nature growing out of their head, and who shows up. I'm just relating personal experience. When we're paying somebody, we were with my dad, a year ago. We were there. Family members were there, as a matter of fact. But we had a caregiver come in, a paid caregiver, and a couple of them showed up with their pillows and their blankets and stuff, and made a nest on the couch. Like, hey, the overnight care, aren't you going to be awake for this? Nah. What? Are you kidding me? Yeah, this is where we're at. And if you've tried to hire a caregiver, you know what I'm talking about. So the point is, supply down, demand up, cost up. What are we going to do about it? What are we doing about it? And there's no clear answer. The long-term care facilities try to get in one. I just challenge you. Good luck. Right? The skilled nursing facilities, which used to have a mix of people in them, they're the hardest cases, the most difficult cases are there now. They're not staffed. They're staffed to handle a mix of cases. They don't have a mix of cases anymore, right? Long-term assisted living facility, right? Used to be, if you were incontinent, then you went to a skilled nursing facility. Well, half the people in assisted living these days are incontinent. That's just reality, okay? But they're not staffed for it. I mean, they got to get staffed for it, but it's very difficult. That's my point. It's very difficult. And then the question is, what's the big societal solution? And the answer is, I don't know. I don't know. I'm not Buddha, okay? I'm not the guru. I'm not the Sphinx, all right? All I know is how to protect, how to work with individual families, and you say, well, you don't have an answer for everything. No, I don't. But I got a rowboat. When the Titanic's going down, I got a rowboat. Okay, who wants some help? Here's how we're going to manage it for your family. Are there bigger societal solutions to it? That's above my pay grade as I look at it. Okay, my job is your family. My job is you. How do we get the care for you? How do I prevent you from going broke? And the fact of the matter is, we're in choppy waters, and it's getting choppier. It's getting more difficult all the time. But that's not to say it's time to give up. Don't give up. You've been listening to the David Carrier Show. I'm David Carrier, your family's personal attorney. Welcome back to the David Carrier Show. This is the place where we shake it up, baby, and try to work it on out. Yeah, we try to do both. Oh, yeah. I love that. 616-774-2424. That's the number to call. 616-774-2424. We'll get your question, comment, or concern on the air. We're talking about some big stuff this week, aren't we? I mean, the fact of the matter is that the forbearance, put it that way, that's been available under the COVID emergency rules, that's over. And we're kind of getting ready for a flood of cases where people are going to lose benefits, people are going to lose their homes. You think that the house is protected. Well, it ain't necessarily so. And so there's going to be a lot of that, I think. Let's see. What if we got to, so those are big pictures, right? What if we look to some of the questions we got here? Let's see. I'm in the process of purchasing a property for my elderly parents. However, my parents have an official lawyer-made will in which they leave that particular property to my brother. If they die without changing the will, can my brother sue me for the house, for that house based on the will? No. Dispositions, I mean, it's pretty clear. Dispositions of specific property, right? So if you say I give somebody this house and you don't own the house, then the estate doesn't have to go out and buy a house so that you can get the house, right? And if the brother did pay fair market value, and it indicates here that there's lawyers involved, a mortgage, and everything else, then can brother sue for that? Now, if they want to challenge the will, because either the parents, not the will, because the will leaves the thing to the brother. If you're getting a bargain sale, right, or something like that, if there's a question of financial exploitation of the elderly or something like, they might be able to sue for that. Well, I mean, they could, right? So you'd have to be doing something wrong in order for them to do that. But based on the will, no. You wouldn't be able to. So don't worry about it. Well, here's how you worry about it. Number one, you get mom and dad to change the will. I mean, you're in there, you're doing this already, whether it's a will or a trust or however it is you've done it. Mom and dad need to make very clear, and you need to establish the record now, that there was no undue influence, that there was no financial exploitation, all of that can all be done right now. And in fact, one of the things that, if you ask me, I mean, what we would try to do is get the kid who was going to get the house to acknowledge now, while mom and dad are staring at him, glaring at him, to say, hey, we did this. If you think I'm crazy, tell me now, right? I mean, if you don't think I'm crazy, write it down, right? That's what I would do. If there's any concern, if you have a realistic concern that one of your siblings is going to come back later on and do something like that, believe me, lots and lots of times, family members are very sore when parents sell the house to one of the kids and it's perceived to be at a bargain sale and on and on, and family relationships can be ruptured over that sort of thing, or perceived favoritism, or either the parents were playing favorites, or maybe the thought is that the kid pushed the parents to do something that the parents didn't want to do. You know what I mean? I mean, there's all ways that this plays out, and most of it you don't really take it to the next level. All right, of getting the kids to sign off saying, no, mom and dad, mommy and dad were of sound mind and everything else. I never complain about it. Okay. That's unusual, taking it that far, but there are families where you would absolutely take it that far, because that the next thing down the pike is somebody's going to start suing. Okay. So if there are hard feelings, then someone's got to accept that, put it that way, I guess. And, if they're going to be hard feelings, but you're not really worried about a lawsuit, then you decide whether getting the price on the house is worth the fractured relationships and all the rest, or lack of understanding, or whatever else it may be. You gotta look at all the circumstances. So you got to, but like it's not at all unusual for the kid who maintained the cottage, for example, right? And you say, well, yeah, well, you only did that for yourself. Yeah, but and now the cottage is worth X amount of dollars. But the cottage wouldn't be worth X amount of dollars. It would have fallen down if the one kid hadn't put the money in. See, so sometimes you have it where the kid puts the money in or maintains the farm. This is another thing, or businesses and things like this. And you got to decide, was it the kid's intervention that kept the cottage, the business, the farm moving? I mean, would you have lost it all if the kid didn't do it? Right. And then you could say, well, the additional value, right, that's thanks to the kid. It wouldn't have happened any other way. That's one way of looking at it. The other way of looking at it is, yeah, the kid did it, but it would have had the same value anyway, or there would have been another way of doing it. So let's give you back the money that you put into it or pay you, whatever, but you're not entitled to the large increase in value, the market increase in value. So it can go both ways. Well, say both ways. It's more like, you remember that movie that was Doctor Strange in the what is it? Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, right? Hey, there's a million different ways that this can go. All right. So it's not just one way or the other. There's lots of different things. So in every family, you've got to analyze it. You've got to think about it. You've got to try to make the best guess that you can based on what's going to happen, and then provide for the downside. And of course, whether or not family members want to go through all the entire process, that's up to them. But it's one of those things. Ignoring it doesn't make it go away. It's like anything else. Let's see. I've got 2 minutes here. Can I hold my sister, my trustee, accountable for never giving me my money from an inheritance? I put my sister in charge of $80,000. She never paid me except $2,500 one time in 2004. Holy crap. What is going on? Well, I mean, we don't know what's going on. Did sister embezzle the money? If it was 2004, that was 18 years ago. You gave her $80,000 18 years ago, and you've never received anything? You may well be beyond the statute of limitations. In Michigan, we have a statute of repose. If you don't, usually a judge can set aside a statute of limitations for certain reasons. Okay. But we also have a statute of repose. I think it's 6 years. If you don't complain in 6 years, the judge can't even set it aside. So this is one of those things where you need to find out what the heck. So can you hold your sister accountable? Well, if you were doing it in a timely manner, yeah. But, the law does not favor those who sleep on their rights. That's a very basic concept of law. If you've got legal rights and you don't vindicate them, it's 18 years. 18 years? Now it's, right? Let me think about that, right? Since 2004 to 19 years. Now it's 19 years. What are you thinking? Can't buy you love. Been listening to the David Carrier Show. I'm David Carrier, your family's personal attorney. Come to a workshop. You'll be glad you did. Welcome back to the David Carrier Show. I'm David Carrier, your family's personal attorney. Give us a shout, 616-774-2424. Let's see. Can I be, we're just trying to do a lightning round here. Let's get some, practical, whatever. Can I be reimbursed for the bills I paid from the estate account or rent later on? I don't know what that means. Also, is there a deadline to claim these funds? Both me and my sibling were both appointed co-administrator of our deceased parents' estate. While we're still going through the probate court process, I paid water bills and property tax out of my own pocket. So in other words, you loaned money to the estate. As a general rule, yeah, you can get paid back, but you have to document it. You have to authenticate it, right? Now, that's different than you provided care services, and now before they died, now you expect to be paid. You can't get that back. And if so mom and dad have died, you fronted money to the estate to pay some bills. Can you get reimbursed? The answer is yes. Make a claim against the estate for the money that you paid. And as the co-administrator, right, as the co-personal representative, co-trustee, what have you, you have the authority to have spent that money on behalf of the estate and can certainly borrow it from yourself to pay the estate. But what you want to do, because you've got a co-administrator, the co-administrator is the one to avoid any allegation of self-dealing. The other person's the one who has to acknowledge that, yes, indeed, you did pay and will reimburse you. Okay, so you can't just be giving money to yourself. Here's the other thing. If you have a loved one living with you, or if you are in that sandwich generation, there's still some of you around. You're caring for your loved one. the thing that people do routinely, and it's routinely a bad idea. Okay. And you might not think it's a bad idea, but it's sort of along these lines where you go grocery shopping and you pick up some stuff for mom, whatever it is. Or you go clothes shopping and you pick up some stuff for mom. You think, hey, look, this is no big deal. I'll pay for it and I'll get reimbursed. But I got the receipt. Obviously, I'm not wearing a house dress. Obviously, I'm not using the pens, what have you. I'm paying her drug bill, whatever. It's very obvious that these are mom's expenses. That's my point. Mom's or dad's expenses. I didn't buy this stuff for me or my kids, right? And yeah, that's logical. Good for you. You were logical. And it's natural. Everybody does it. So it's logical and it's natural. It's also wrong. It's also going to get you in trouble with the Medicaid. Okay. So don't do it. So when you buy stuff for mom, right, you put it on your own debit card, credit card, pay cash, whatever it is you do, write the check, whatever it is you do, when you do that, and then you provide those goods or pay for services as well. When you do that, that's a gift. That's how Medicaid looks at it. You gave that. You didn't have to. There was no legal obligation for you to provide that, but you did anyway. And because mom's your relative, right? Last you knew anyway, mom's your relative. So that's deemed to have been done out of love and affection. That's how they look at it. Love and affection. Well, because let's face it, you wouldn't do it for the stranger next door, right? Or down the street. So you did it for love and affection. When mom pays you back, because there was no legal obligation to pay you back, that's a gift also. We've seen people get into huge problems with this when they're paying the bills and they're writing the money for mom out of their own checking account, stuff like that. Medicaid doesn't want to hear later on about this. Okay. They don't want to hear, oh, I was doing it for mom. Then the answer is, well, where's the contract? Where's the obligation? No legal obligation, no credit, viewed as a gift. That's the deal. Okay. So don't do that. If you're going to do shopping for mom, all right, get her debit card. Run 2 receipts. That's what you have to do. So it's a little bit different here, and don't come back and go, well, you said I could do this. No, what I said was, if you're the co-administrator of the estate, you got to have the other administrator or personal representative, trustee, whoever. If you're the only trustee, you can do it. But if you've got a co, and sometimes you should have a special trustee. You should appoint somebody to pay you back the money that you fronted to the estate. Generally speaking, you're not talking a lot of money, so it's not a big deal. You can get everyone else to sign off on it. But if we're talking like we had this where mom and dad sold the house to the kid, right? What if it was the kid as trustee buying the house? Well, wait a second. You can't do that. That's a bridge too far, right? You're going to have to appoint a special trustee to ensure that there was no self-dealing. In the example that we had earlier in the show, well, it's mom and dad doing it themselves. But if it wasn't, if it was someone doing it under power of attorney or a trustee, you bet your bottom dollar you better have a co-trustee, and so that you're not the one to do it. Let's see. Sister-in-law had power of attorney for her mom, withheld her money to defend herself in a court case. Is that legal? Well, if what I'm understanding here is that sister-in-law had power of attorney for her mom, it says she withheld her money. I'm guessing that daughter-in-law or sister-in-law kept mom's money to defend sister-in-law in a court case. Yeah. Sister-in-law withheld my mother-in-law's Social Security and other money from her. Sister-in-law used her mother's money and hired a lawyer to sue her money for interdiction. I don't even know what that means. But I'm thinking for a court case, right? Her son was the trustee of the trust. Sister-in-law would not relinquish funds to help defend her. Sister-in-law leaving her mother without funds because she withheld the funds. Had her mother use court-appointed lawyer, did not do anything for her, blah, blah, blah. Wow. So that's kind of amazing, right? So you've got the person who had power of attorney right? Took the ward's money to sue the ward. That's kind of unbelievable. And anyway, so yeah. Can you do that? No, you can't do that. That's what it sounds like. She withheld her money to defend herself in court case. So it's not really clear what we're talking about. I mean, it looks like they went for a guardianship or something. And the sister-in-law with the power of attorney wouldn't give money to defend the mom against the guardianship, is what it looks like. And made her use a court-appointed attorney. Can you do that? No, you should be using the money. Well, you have a power of attorney. What do you need the guardianship for anyway? But if you did need a guardianship, or to find that someone was incapacitated, then either you defend it or you agree with it, and you could go along with that. You could say, no, I'm not gonna spend money to contest because I believe mom truly is incompetent, is incapacitated. That wouldn't be it's just wasted money at that point. That's the way you'd look at it. So yeah. So this is one of those where everything happens in the world. Here's one of them. You've been listening to the David Carrier Show. I'm David Carrier, your family's personal attorney. Give us a shout. Come to our workshop. Love to see you there.